each of you out there, this is our night, International Women's Day. Let's get started making good trouble. With the Raging Grannies.
The grannies are swarming with warnings of warning. It's time we're reforming our country's great shame. So we'll keep performing our global informing till they stop deforming the earth in our name. Singing, let's get together, we can change this world. Singing, let's get together, we can change this world. The grannies are raging in our age today to sing for the earth in our granny-like way. With humor and passion, with voices raised high, we sing for the planet, the seas, and the sky. Singing, let's get together, we can change this world. Singing, let's get together, we can change this world. We sing for our children and grandchildren too. Our voices ring out clear and strong with the news that capitalism is following our land. We must change the system all grannies demand. Singing, let's get together, we will change this world. Singing, let's get together, we will change this world.
Is that it? Hello?
I kid you not, the planet's getting hot. We might pretend it's not, but the world is on the spot. The forests and the bees are saying how to please. We'll soon be underwater cause the planet's getting hotter. It's true, and it's true, yes it's true. The planet's hot, we can't pretend it's not. Whatever shall we do? When it doesn't snow, there are no icy floats. The polar bears will weep, cause there's no place left to sleep. The penguin chicks are cheeping while the waters quickly deepen. Harp seals are crying as their little ones are dying. They're blue, and they're blue. We are too. The planet's hot, we can't pretend it's not. Whatever ever shall we do? Do not despair, there's not much time to spare. We'll save the planet's climate, we can do it if we dare. Let's make a resolution to banish all pollution. Make a set of rules to dispense with fossil fuels. Let's do. Me and you. The planet's hot, we won't pretend it's not. Let's go and raise a hullabaloo. make peace instead of war. When we make peace instead of war. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When we make peace instead of war. When justice rules instead of force. When justice rules instead of force. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When justice rules instead of force. When native folks get back their land. When native folks get back their land. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When native folks get back their land. Oh, when care is taken for the earth. When care is taken for the earth. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When care is taken for the earth. When refugees are welcome here. When refugees are welcome here. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When refugees are welcome here. Oh, when we change our racist ways. Oh, when we change our racist ways. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When we change our racist ways. Oh, when everyone has voting rights. When everyone has voting rights. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When everyone has voting rights. When women's bodies are our own. When women's bodies are our own. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When women's bodies are our own. When we make peace instead of war. When we make peace instead of war. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When we make peace instead of war.
Thank you, Raging Grannies. Gosh, we're lucky to have you. Now, please welcome tribal member Daisy Smith. Is she here?
She's not here. She's outside, maybe?
I doubt it. I'm sorry, we have a little bit of a glitch going on. How about we give our own prayer?
Sure.
Come on.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. You want to?
So, let's just give our own prayer.
Yeah,
Daisy's not
come
here.
on. Let's do our own.
Yeah,
prayer.
come on, let's all do the prayer. What? We're coming up?
Yep, we are.
Okay.
We're doing our own prayer. Sort of. Not exactly. So we always like to open with a Native American prayer to give thanks for where we live. And so our person from the Yurok tribe wasn't able to come. So we're each going to give a thank you to our earth and a call for something wonderful. Okay, each of us.
Someone else should go first. Someone else should go first.
So, I want to give thanks to the Native people who lived here before us and for the interaction of all of our different groups in our area to try to help achieve peace.
Oh, I would like to say, I'd like to send out a prayer for forgiveness, a prayer for gratitude for all the love that is in this world. If we just reach out and reach down deeply enough and remember the folks who suffered before us to fight for freedom and justice, and I stand with them, and I pray that their spirit is here tonight and we go forward and move it one more step forward.
I'd like to mention that I stand on Wiyot land. I am a guest on Wiyot land. And I offer a prayer of solidarity to the people of Ukraine. May they all be safe from harm. May their country be free. May they get all the humanitarian aid that they need. And just bless those people.
Thank you. As a member of our Humboldt branch of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, I can say that we're so very happy to have each of you join us to celebrate this very special day, International Women's Day. I'm giving just a very quick, brief history. In February of 1908, 15,000 women marched on the streets of New York to call for equality in work and voting rights. A year later, the Socialist Women of America honored those original 15,000 women by declaring February 28th National Women's Day. 2 years later, other nations joined and it became International Women's Day. And finally, in 1975, the United Nations recognized International Women's Day, and the date was set for March 8th. Since then, over 27 nations celebrate International Women's Day with speeches, marches, demands for women's rights, and celebrations with music and such. In some countries, International Women's Day is a holiday. Yay! So tonight, we're graced with Caroline Griffith, Director of North Coast Environmental Center, to speak to this year's theme, which is Gender Equity or Equality Today for a Sustainable World. Caroline describes herself as an omnivore of local activism. Think that one through. I had to. Yeah. And she is a true believer in collaboration and the power of people to bring about change. As the director of North Coast Environmental Center, she'll bring these themes together. Thank you. Please welcome Caroline.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here with you all this evening. As we were listening to the Grannies, it was reminding me, I was in a meeting earlier today where data was presented in number form and then in graph form for people who learn two different ways. And I'm thinking of what I have to say as the numbers form because the Grannies already showed the graph and gave a different representation for those of you who take things in differently. I had the option tonight of zooming in or pre-recording something, and I decided to come here to the almost empty Playhouse because I realized how much I miss leaving my home and going to some place to be with people talking about important things. And as the Grannies were singing, I was kind of looking around the space and populating it with different people who I wish were here. Some of them who are people I know, who I've gotten to work with, and some of them are just people who I admire and who I hope I get to work with someday. And so that exercise of doing that made me actually really hopeful about the future and all the people who are shaping it. When I was asked to speak on the topic of gender equality for a sustainable future, I immediately said yes because that is a topic I think about honestly daily. As Caroline mentioned, I work in the environmental field now, but throughout the years I've been a part of different movements, all of which are at the heart movements for equality and working to transform the world to build community. So I've basically been giving variations of this speech my entire life in my head. And actually I was reminded as I was preparing for this that one of my favorite movies as a kid was a Disney musical called Newsies, which is based on a true life story of a newsboy strike in New York City in 1899. And the newsboys, and it was entirely boys, I don't know that there was a single female character in the movie, but they were fighting newspaper titans and captains of industry and the richest men in the world for fair wages and for fair working conditions. And I don't know if it was the cause or if it was the dancing, but as a child I was totally on fire for that movie. And I wanted to be a newsboy and I wanted to go on strike. And so, and for a big chunk of my childhood, when I would fall asleep at night, I would be composing speeches in my head for my fellow newsboys about fairness and fighting the system. And that, you know, like most kids, I was concerned about fairness. But that was really the first time that I thought about it as like a big concept, of big unfairnesses. You know, it was more than just about my sisters getting more of something than me. This was about, you know, masses of people who sacrificed for the benefit of the few. And it also made me think about the power that those masses have when they join together for a common goal. And I haven't seen the movie in decades, so I honestly cannot say that I can recommend it to you all. But the topic is still surprisingly relevant and pretty radical for a Disney movie, honestly. But as we enter into a new gilded age with new industrialists exploiting people and the earth to further their ambitions, it's really more important than ever that we recognize the patterns and cycles of injustice that allow those few to rise to power over the many, and to fight for a future in which the underlying systems that allow those injustices to happen become a thing of the past. So I'm not here to be a downer, but as many of you know, if you have read or heard anything about the latest report from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, we are at a point in the climate crisis at which we need to drastically change the way that we're living on this planet if we want to have a future, let alone a sustainable future. And the changes that we need aren't even possible within the current framework and power dynamic that we have. This is because those same systems and beliefs held by the industrialists that exploited those inspirational newsboys are alive and well today and are the exact same systems and beliefs that are fueling the climate crisis, the immigration crisis, the housing crisis, and the vast inequality that locally has left hundreds of people living on the streets. Greed, capitalism, patriarchy, racism, colonization, all of the things that the Grannies sang about earlier have all contributed to our current situation of climate instability, human migration, poverty, and war. But I'm not interested in talking about the doom and gloom here tonight. I'm here to talk about how we get out of this and how we move towards a sustainable future. So it might not be easy, and it's definitely going to take a while, but the journey is just as important and fulfilling as the destination and can be just as rewarding. So before we get into that, I did want to talk a little bit about why we're here in the first place. And Caroline did give an overview of International Women's Day. And some of the legends that I have read say that the first one was actually held on March 8th, 1857, to honor a protest by women garment workers, right? And then years later, this is why it came back on March 8th. And I guess, you know, Caroline brought up the reasons why they had those protests. And unfortunately, you know, 100 plus years later, we're still fighting for the exact same things. Only a quarter of our federal legislators are women, voting rights are being threatened across the country, and women still face workplace harassment and discrimination. And so what's more is that the same forces and systems that kept our grandmothers and great-grandmothers under men's thumbs are keeping children in immigration prisons and keeping us dependent on extractive economies and low-wage jobs that degrade us and the planet. And at the heart of all these issues is the basic notion that one group gets to have power over another because they're somehow naturally deserving of it. And the notion is so insidious and deeply ingrained that it's worked its way into every facet of our culture. I honestly look forward to a day when we transcend the need for International Women's Day, or Black History Month, or Pride Month, because we actually get to a point in which the lives and experiences and knowledge of people, of all people, hold the same value. But we have an immense amount of work to get to that point. And in the meantime, I think it's really helpful to think about where all of our struggles intersect and where the points for collaboration and solidarity lie. So the theme that I was first presented for this talk is the UN theme for International Women's Day, which is gender equality today for a sustainable future tomorrow. It's like a slogan. And I was like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Gender equality, right? We represent 51% of the population, so naturally we need to have a representative seat at the table if we're going to come up with solutions that we need for a future in which all of us have our needs met. But as with a lot of the topics that I start writing about, it's really easy to veer off of the original theme because all of the struggles against the current power dynamic are just so interconnected. You know, we can't talk about gender equality without talking about race and class. Again, as the Grannies sang, this country was founded on genocide, land theft, and racial inequality, and these forces still greatly affect how equality is applied among women and who is even considered a woman. So in order to talk about equality among genders, we need to talk about equality within them and the ongoing struggle to achieve that. Even the wokest amongst us is still steeped in this patriarchal and white supremacist culture, and the work to dismantle these systems both within us and around us needs to be ongoing if we aren't going to just pass that same culture and behaviors on to the next generation. So maybe what we should actually be talking about is racial and gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. And what about equality? Is that actually enough? Equality is generally taken to mean all people having the same opportunities and resources. So if equality in this context means that women and people of all races and classes are given the opportunities and resources to participate in the same structures that have given one group power over others, is that actually the answer? Equity can go further than this by recognizing that each person has different circumstances, and so they need to have different resources and opportunities to reach an equal outcome, which moves us in the right direction, but again, if the systems are still the same, equity doesn't get us where we need to be. What we need is to change those systems in a way that leads to long-term, sustainable, equitable access for generations to come. And for that, we need justice. So what we need is racial and gender justice today for a sustainable future tomorrow. And I'd like to take it a step further and suggest that in addition to gender and racial equity, we should take an ecosystem-wide view and see how we can advance species justice and stop thinking of humans as the only species with the right to thrive. Many Indigenous authors and speakers, some of whom are in my imaginary audience, point to a major difference between Indigenous environmentalists and white American environmentalists as being in the use of the term resources to talk about trees, water, minerals, plants, and animals. A local professor whom I admire, Dr. Caitlin Reed, once said in a webinar that I watched, it was about white supremacist attitudes and environmentalism. She said, what you call your natural resources, our people call our relatives. Even the words that we use to describe what we're doing and what we're fighting for come from a patriarchal place of possession and dominance, rather than a relational place of kinship. Imagine how different our existence on this planet would be if we looked at the rest of its inhabitants, especially those who don't move or talk or act like us, as kin who have just as much purpose and right to be here as we do, rather than as resources to be exploited for profit. So maybe what I really want to talk about is kinship and justice today for a sustainable future tomorrow. Although we should also talk about sustainability and what that word means. I assume that the UN is referring to the economic, environmental, and social concept that we can meet the needs of the present without compromising the needs of future generations. But looking in my dictionary, the definition that jumped out at me was capable of being supported or upheld as by having its weight borne from below. And my cynical self says that if that's the sustainability that we're going for, then our system is already sustainable because the vast majority of the weight is already being borne by those at the bottom of the hierarchy. Women, people of color, the global majority, the poor, and the plants and animals that don't have a voice. However, my hopeful self omits that part about the weight being borne from below and just focuses on capable of being supported and upheld, and imagines that support coming from right alongside, from the shoulder of a friend and ally, who I'm also supporting and holding up. And that's the sustainable future that I want to work towards. One which we collectively agree is worth supporting together. So I guess a more appropriate title for this is, and the message I'd like to convey would be Kinship and Justice Today for a Future Worth Supporting Together Tomorrow. A woman that I know who recently turned 80 mentioned that she started working on her 200-year plan, not because she expects to live for 200 more years, but because she knows it's important to be doing as much as she can right now to lay the groundwork for the future. I've adopted this practice as a means of working backwards to figure out what I should be doing today to get to that future that I imagine, that I would like to support with all of you, which is collaborative, non-hierarchical, non-binary, prison-free, borderless, and anti-racist, and we have clean air and clean water and art, lots of art. And it's hard to imagine that world because not only is it so different from the one that we currently inhabit, but also we can't automatically flip a switch and get there. But I take comfort in the fact that although I may never arrive at that imagined world 200 years from now, the fact that we can get there through kinship and justice means that the road that we take to get there will be meaningful and powerful. So, what can we be doing today to get us to that sustainable future in which all of us have our needs met and we all have the same opportunities to pursue our dreams? Which acts of kinship and justice can we be engaging in? I'm just going to give you 3 examples, but I hope that some of the folks who are out there watching are some of the ones that I imagine are watching, and that maybe we can have further conversations about different tactics we can use. But the first thing, and I don't think I need to be saying this to this crowd, but is to fight for reproductive rights. An argument that has been very popular with conservationists throughout the years is that we'll never be able to address environmental issues and climate change without dealing with overpopulation, particularly in non-white and developing nations. And this is part of a phenomenon that I recently heard referred to as green hate, which is basically racism and misogyny disguised as environmentalism. And to this day, we get emails and pamphlets at the North Coast Environmental Center office from people and groups who are focused on overpopulation as the primary cause for climate change. And they're anti-immigrant, some of them explicitly advocate for eugenics programs, and I want you to know that some of these come from people right here in this community. So, what they conveniently ignore is the evidence that educating women and girls, giving them access to opportunities, and letting them control their fertility makes major strides in reducing emissions. The overpopulation crisis is solved by empowering women to determine when and if they give birth. So, although it might not seem like an explicitly environmental act, protecting reproductive rights helps the planet. Second, work to house our neighbors. Housing is a human right, and again, although it may not seem like building housing is an environmental act or a feminist act, the way that we treat our fellow humans and the way that we house them can have a profound effect on the future and on the planet. Will we continue to the model of the last century in which we keep expanding and building into forests and into greenland and keeping us separated and dependent on fossil fuels? Or will we reimagine our cities and towns as people-friendly spaces that encourage walking and biking and community and speaking with our neighbors? We're on the verge of a lot of development here in Humboldt County, and it's really important that we do it with the future in mind. Advocating for climate-friendly, people-friendly, affordable development and housing for all can have a huge impact on the environment. And the third thing, and the thing that I like the most, that you can be doing right now to point us towards a sustainable future that is worth all of us supporting together, is to work for the rematriation of ancestral lands to Indigenous people by giving land back. Returning land reclaims what was taken from women and Mother Earth and uplifts the benefit of the matriarchy. This is not only an act of reparations for the land that was stolen by settlers, but it's a proven way to benefit the land and the beings on it. Indigenous people are the original stewards of this land, and they have extensive land management knowledge and practices that date back millennia. And actually, an August 2021 Indigenous Environmental Network report shows that Indigenous land defense efforts over the past decade have stopped or delayed at least 25% of US and Canada's carbon dioxide emissions, right? So not only is rematriation justice, but it's also an effective way to support the planet. Also, paying an honor tax to the tribe whose land that you live on is a good step towards land justice and reparations. So further down, the dictionary entries of sustain is one that I felt was really appropriate for this topic of the future, which is to keep one's mind or spirits, etc., from sinking or giving way. To buoy up, as in she is sustained by hope. With so much inequality and devastation on display and the enormity of the issues facing us, it's easy to think that all is lost and there's nothing that we can do. That's why it's so important to sustain our hope and keep working towards the future that we want. As I conclude, I want to encourage everybody to start working on your 200-year plans and to think about the world that you want to leave for the next 7 generations and to start embodying that future right now. Don't worry about living long enough to see the results. If you're doing it the right way, in a spirit of justice and kinship, the journey will be just as good as the destination. Thanks.
Yeah. Right on, sister.
Thank you. Wow. Pardon?
Slideshow, maybe play it before the thing.
Sure, go ahead. We have something else to add.
It's Daisy's slideshow.
Okay, this is Daisy Smith's slideshow that we were hoping we had in the beginning. Thank you. Minor Peltier. Thank you, Daisy, and thank you, Caroline. Now we get to one of the really fun parts of the evening, and that will be our sing-along. I want to mention that as we celebrate and support women's struggles for peace and justice in our world, we also are calling for support for the women and families in Ukraine and their struggle for survival and peace in their homeland. And we call on our own nation to learn from Europe in welcoming refugees fleeing violence in all its forms. And so now we're going to get to sing a bunch of songs that really go along with all of that, okay? Please welcome Jan Bramlett and Leslie Quinn and our ASL interpreter. What's your name again? What? Sunny, thank you.
Hi, everybody. We're glad to be back here again. And it's a pity that we don't have sound coming in the other direction, so we can't hear you sing. So I just think you should sing extra, extra loud tonight, okay? So maybe we can feel it come through the walls. You think? What do you think, Les?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it.
I want to thank Tim Geralds, who is our sound person and our stage setup and removal and all the things that we have to do here. And I also want to thank Women's International League for Peace and Freedom for having us again. And I want to thank Caroline for having such a great vision to carry us forward. Man, this is amazing. This is going to be like, I love all that you had to say. I was just so on the edge of my seat, inspired. So everybody pay attention to what she said.
And I'd like to thank Jackie Dandino and all the badass women that are doing the Zero to Fierce Festival.
Okay.
It's our 6th year and it's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for always having us back. And for Sundara, who is going to be doing interpretation for those who are hearing impaired, like myself, except I have a little bit of hearing. For those of you who rely on sign language, she's the bomb. Okay, oh, that's an old-fashioned saying, I know, but I'm old. Okay.
So everybody, our starting note is 2, 2.
2. Is that it? All right.
Too much of nothing to make a man feel ill at ease. One man's temper might rise, another man's temper might freeze. In the day of long confession, we cannot mar the soul. When there's too much of nothing, no one has control. Say hello to Valerie, say hello to Marion, send them all my salary on the waters of oblivion. Too much of nothing can make a man abuse a king. He can walk the streets and boast like Moses, but he don't know a thing. It's all been done before. It's all been written in the book. But when there's too much of nothing, nobody should look. Say hello to Larry. Say hello to Marion. Send them all my salary on the waters of oblivion. Too much of nothing can turn a man into a lie. It can cause one man to sleep on nails, another man to eat fire. Everybody's doing something. I heard it in a dream. But when there's too much of nothing, it just makes a fella mean. Too bad. Say hello to Valerie, say hello to Marion, send them all my salary on the waters of oblivion.
Yeah. And I also want to say thank you to our beautiful host, Shoshana, who is working really hard to keep all this stuff going on out there in the lobby. The little wizard of our computer land. And Leslie's going to give us all a note. That helps me, and it helps you too. So so we can all stay sort of in sync. This is a song by Tom Petty called Wildflowers.
Okay. So the starting note is you belong.
You
You.
sure?
Yes. You belong. Yes.
You belong among the wildflowers. You belong on a boat out at sea. Sail away, kill off the hours. You belong somewhere you feel free. Run away, find you a lover. Go away somewhere all bright and new. I have seen no other who compares with you. You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in a boat out at sea. You belong with your love on your arm. You belong somewhere you feel free. Da 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 da. Run away, go find a lover. Run away, let your heart be your guide. You deserve the deepest of cover. You belong in a home by mine. You belong among the wildflowers. You belong somewhere close to me. Far away from your trouble and worry. You belong somewhere you feel free. You belong somewhere you feel free. Thank you. Are you singing out there? We want you to be singing. The words are up there. Oh, anybody know The Water is Wide? This is an older one. I'm going to sing harmony on this one so y'all can sing the low part or maybe the high part, or I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm just kind of going along with whatever she does. I want to thank Leslie for setting up the songs this year. She did a great job in selecting them, and it's really hard to have a deaf person be your song companion, your partner, and she has to work really hard with me to have me learn these things sometimes. You know what? So I'm grateful for that, our friendship. Okay.
Perfect. So the starting note is the. Okay.
Timing? The water is wide, I can cross over, and neither have Thank you. Thank you, thank you. We're doing a song about home by Carla Bonoff. And also by Bonnie Raitt. We feel that some of these songs are soothing to the soul in a time when we all need a home. And we are thinking about our people in Ukraine, our people here without homes, and sending everybody energy and love.
So our starting note is traveling.
Yes, thank you. You do speak.
Traveling at night, the headlights were bright, and we been up many an hour. All through my brain came the refrain of home and its warm environment. Home sings me of sweet things. My life there has its own wings. Fly over the mountain, though I'm standing still. The people I've seen, they come in between the cities of tiny light. The trains come and go, but inside you know the struggle will soon be a fight. And home sings me of sweet things. My life there has its own wings. Fly over the mountains, though I'm standing still. Traveling at night, the headlights were bright, but soon the sun came through the trees. Around the next bend, the flowers will send the sweet scent of home in a breeze. And home sings me of sweet things. My life there has its own wings. Fly over the mountain, though I'm standing still. The mosquito didn't fly in my mouth, I'll have you know. I need to tune.
So here's a little fighting song a little bit. I Won't Back Down. That's the name of the song. It's nothing to stand your ground laws like they interpret them in Florida, I just want to point out. This is us. We stand our ground for justice and freedom. Anti-racism. And all the other things that Caroline said. All right.
That's right, that's right. working up a little sweat here.
That's what happens with deaf people if they don't have their note right. Oh yeah, it can get really strange. Well, hopefully you sang loud enough so you can hear me singing on my wrong note. Okay, this is an old one.
This was written a very long time ago in the Liberty Prison. I'm assuming it's in the Deep South. And this was a song about being in the prison and dying and going home. And Johnny Cash first made this song famous. And the first note is, I'm just...
Okay. Now, as sad as that was, because we do have to acknowledge sadness, because there's a lot of sad things happening in the world. We got a great song now. Now we got to get happy. A lot of you may really recognize this song. It's called Song of the Soul.
Chris Williamson.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for bringing up the mood here.
The first note will be love, love of my life.
Love of my life, I
happening out there. Capo. This is a Bruce Coburn song, and he knows we're doing this tonight, and he sends his love to everybody.
He said okay about our song choice.
He's in Ann Arbor tonight. Okay.
And the first note after the intro will be, oh, I love you.
Yes.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's start over.
Okay, we're starting over.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Songs about home here. Yes.
So this next song was written by Stephen Stills. It's called Johnny's Garden. And in the 70s, Stephen was touring in England, and he went to Ringo's house. And Ringo's gardener is named Johnny. So that's how this song came about. And then Stephen Stills bought Ringo's place. So this is now Stephen's garden.
Okay.
There's a place. Is the starting note. There's a yeah, it's a G. There's a place. Yes.
Got it. Yeah. Deaf girl got her note. There's a place.
There's
1, 2. Okay.
1, 2, lift it, boop, bop.
There's a place
I can stay here in Johnny's garden. As the swift bird flies over the grasses, dipping now and then to get his breakfast. And I come and go, and I travel, and I can watch that bird and unravel, and I'll do anything I got to do. Cut my hair and shine my shoes and keep on singing the blues if I can stay here in Johnny's garden. With his love and his caring, he puts his life into beauty sharing, and his children are his flowers. They give us peace in the quiet hours, and I'll do anything I got to do. Cut my hair and shine my shoes and keep on singing the blues if I can stay here in Johnny's garden. In Johnny's garden. In Johnny's garden. Thank you for singing with us. I have to say, it's not like the old days when this whole place was filling up with people's voices, but maybe next year we're gonna do it, okay?
Yep. And you have to retune too.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Sounds funny. Hold on. Fickle strings. Maybe that's a good name for a band.
Both ideas are out.
Okay.
Oops, I'm forgetting this. I need one down my hands.
Mine is G. Yep. Show.
Show.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, go. Show me a prison. Show me a jail. Show me a prisoner whose face has grown pale, and I'll show you a young man with so many reasons why. There, but for fortune, for you, for you and Show me the alley. Show me the train. Show me a hobo who sleeps out in Brooklyn, and I'll show you a young man with so many reasons why. There, but for fortune,
Now Eastern Ukraine, where the bombs had to fall. Show me the ruins of buildings once so tall, and I'll show you a young land with so many reasons why. There but for fortune, for you and I, you and I.
It was written by Joan Baez and Phil Oakes. Love that song.
So this is a little like, I don't know, it reminds me of one of my, I come from a Christian family, though I'm not a Christian myself, but we used to sit around and sing a lot of old hymns out of these books that we stole from the church and brought home. And
Like you do.
like you do. And this song sort of reminds me of that, but it's got, it's not about Christ.
This song was written in 1854 by Stephen Foster.
Is that good timing? Yeah. 2, 3, 4.
Let you know. Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all share sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading faces say, oh, hard times come again no more. There's a song, a sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. There's a pale drooping maiden who toils her life away with a worn heart whose better days are o'er. Though her voice would be singing, 'tis sighing all the day. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a song, a sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. No more.
Oof. I was like really lost in that song. Was I singing on?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, we're at the last song, and we want to thank you all for coming tonight and hopefully singing along with us. and drowning out my off notes. And let me see. I used to be able to sing on key all the time. Let me see. E, A.
You're doing fine, Jen.
Let's see. Sometimes I'm right. Is that it? Sometimes I'm right.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm right.
Also, a round of ASL jazz hands applause for Sundara Griffith
Yeah.
Hall. This is the first time we've had an interpreter on stage. It's a
And
wonderful,
we hope it's
wonderful
not the
thing.
last.
That's right. May this be a regular thing.
Sometimes. Is that where we are? Sometimes. We're on sometimes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes I'm right and I can be wrong. My own beliefs are in my song. The butcher, the baker, the drummer, and then makes no difference what group I'm in. I am everyday people. Yeah, yeah. There is a group on mechanics and the Greek, one for living with the math, one who's trying to be a king, one different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on, and Scooby-Dooby-Dooby, ooh, sha-sha. We got to live together. I am no better, and neither are you. We are the same, whatever we do. You love me, you hate me, you know me, and then you can't figure out the bag I'm in. I am everyday people. Yeah, yeah. There is a long and it doesn't like the short hair for being such a rich one that will not help the poor one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on, and Scooby-Dooby-Dooby, ooh, sha-sha. We got to live together. There is a yellow one who won't respect the black one, that won't respect the red one, who won't respect the white one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on, and Scooby-Dooby-Dooby, ooh, sha-sha. I am everyday people.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Sly Stone. Thank you all. Thank you for being here with us tonight, out there. Thank you, Sandora. And y'all, I want to thank the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom who do this every year. It is so righteous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Well, thank
you.
You sounded great.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Carol.
Think of all the people out with us.
I'm thinking of them.
Thank you.
You can use any one of these mics.
Yeah.
We are, okay, yeah. We are so lucky. Jen and Leslie have been doing this. We were trying to figure out for at least 6 years. And our group started our humble celebrations for International Women's Day. I think it was 2011. So we've gotten pretty good at this now. So finally, this is a day, I'm going to move this a little bit. There. This is a day on which we celebrate honoring the core of feminism, which is belief in full social, economical, and political equality for women. Most of us are feminists, even if we don't know it. So what feeds the soul of feminists and of women everywhere today? To be safe, to be valued, to live in peace, to have our own resources, to be connected, to have control over our bodies and our lives, to be loved. On all these fronts, there is much work yet to be done. Our hope is to light the torches of our friends and neighbors and to ignite our daughters and our granddaughters, for they will have to live for us as we lived for our mothers and our grandmothers, and carry on the work that still needs to be done. Caroline Griffith gave a lot of goals, didn't she? And so all of that is, in the words of John Lewis and Kamala Harris, Kamala has often said, it's good trouble. And so let's go forth from today for another year of good trouble. So thank you to everyone that's been here. And now we're going to have a final word from Naomi Steinberg. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not time. Can you wait? Just a minute. I wanted to say a few more things about our group. We are the Humboldt branch of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. It's truly an international organization. We do one thing that we try to do for our community, and that is every year we take applications and give some scholarships or grants to Humboldt residents who are proposing projects that will help peace and justice and freedom, either locally or worldwide. But you must be a resident of Humboldt County. In order to do that, we raise money, and one way we raise money is that we're gifted a quilt that we sell tickets for. Just a minute. So this is our current quilt, and it's we call it the Edith Eckert Scholarship. There are posters around town. I think at this point, because we're just streaming here, the easiest way is if you keep your eyes open for it. The flyers for it just say "Win this quilt," and there's a QR code. And we're working now with the Ink People, and it gives us a nonprofit status. So please, if you would like to contribute to our scholarships, we've given them to everyone from an HSU student who went to Uganda to help with refugee camps. Years ago, some women went to Chiapas for a conference, but we've helped the senior center in southern Humboldt to buy a new warmer for taking food to elders. We've helped the Black Lives, what was that last time? Anyway, we help a lot of local people, sorry. So anyway, we appreciate any time you can contribute to our scholarship fund. So with that, it's now time for Naomi Steinberg. Thank you for joining us.
Hey there, Shoshana, am I on? Yes, it says you're on. Okay, hello everybody. Hello. I'm zooming in here from my home in Carlotta. Gotten pretty used to zooming in the last couple of years. Can you hear me okay? Shoshana, tell me if there's any problem, okay? I've been enjoying watching the program on the live stream. And now I can zoom. I haven't been in Arcata in more than a year, I think. And of course, I love Arcata and I love the Playhouse and look forward to getting back there when it's the right time. So thank you all for such a rich program on such a very important theme. And I'm hanging on to something Caroline said earlier, just about one more step forward. You know, we just have to keep taking steps forward. We want some giant leaps forward. We need them. We deserve them. But if you just to honor each step that we take is tremendously important. So we've covered a huge range of themes tonight that are all totally appropriate to the topic. I went online and looked at the lovely video that the United Nations put out on our topic, and I was really moved by one line in that video that said, gender equality is not just a women's issue, it's the path to our survival. Wow. Gender equality is not just a women's issue, it's the path to our survival. Deep, deep and beautifully put. So we have to walk this path boldly, bravely, hopefully, and we have to walk it in every avenue we can, in technical fields, in social fields, everywhere we can. I'm a spiritual seeker and a spiritual leader, and as a rabbi, I live and I work and I function inside a religious tradition with its roots in antiquity. So for me especially, I need to walk this path in religion and to confront gender inequality in religious traditions. There are many phases of that. One important phase is confronting misogynistic literature, misogynistic beliefs, and misogynistic practices wherever we see them. And this is something that can be very, very touchy because some people can say, this is how this tradition functions, and who are we to impose our will on them? But we need to keep the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as our basic guideline, and if there are religious practices and views that are not consistent with that, we need to speak out bravely so that the women in those traditions can be lifted up. We also need to ensure women access to religious participation, especially in all settings, but hopefully to move toward egalitarian rituals, egalitarian classes, equal opportunity, equal access for women to holy sites. You know, in my tradition, we have what's called a minyan, which is a quorum for prayer. And for many, many, many centuries, for more than 2,000 years, the minyan was 10 men. 10 men. And now that's changing, and now we like to have a minyan that's mixed, and we don't pay any attention to whose gender is in that minyan. So that's a tiny example of how my tradition is working on rebalancing and on becoming more egalitarian. Another important part of confronting gender inequity in religion is empowering women as religious leaders. And of course, the ordination of women is a subject I feel pretty passionate about, since I myself am the beneficiary of ordination. And I'll share that everyone in my ordaining committee was a man. It just happens that my teachers were men. And the one teacher I really wanted, the woman who wanted to give me her empowerment, unfortunately left this world before she was able to do so. But our traditions need to be open to empowering women. Just this afternoon, I was on a Zoom meeting with a deacon from the Catholic Church, and he was mentioning how tricky it is to talk about ordination of women, that his daughters are very much in favor of ordination in the Catholic Church, and that's still, they've got a long way to go on that. So now we need to encourage this, in confronting misogynistic practices, ensuring women access to religious participation, and empowering women as religious leaders. But tonight I want to focus briefly on the underlying gender issue, a deep underlying kind of fundamental issue in our established religious traditions, which is the identity of the divine, that is the gender of God. In English, I can say, God bless you, and that's a gender neutral statement. God is gender neutral, bless, the verb is neutral, and you is also neutral. But in many traditions, in many languages, all of those things will have gender. In Hebrew, feel my pain, God would have a gender, bless has a gender, and you also has a gender. So there's a great deal of gender specificity packed into the Hebrew language, and it's reflected in the Hebrew Bible. So we're pretty lucky that in English we can make statements that are not clearly directed to a single woman, a single man, or a group of men, or a group of women. I can say, great to see you all, and it doesn't matter whether you all are women or men or a mixed group or non-binary folks. So we have kind of a unique opportunity, we English language speakers, to develop new forms of speaking about the great mystery that a lot of us have come to call God or Goddess. I want to just give a little overview of our feminist history in terms of God's gender. I'll show you some of my books here. Oh, I think the books come out backwards on your screen. I'm not sure. Oh, I see it backwards because it's a mirror for me. So in 1976, an artist and an art historian came out with a book called When God Was a Woman. It's by Merlin Stone. And it lit the imagination of lots of feminists in the United States to go back to think about all the beautiful art that we find that comes out of the very ancient Middle East, or what they sometimes call the Near East, and the Mediterranean basin, and the Levant, Northern Africa. And so much of that beautiful art has female deities depicted. You know, flowing hair, curvaceous shapes, motherly shapes. And it was an exciting time back in the 70s when women started to say, let me imagine a time when God was a woman. So there's a lot of, I think a book like this did a lot of good in its day. However, it also, moving around in the 70s, there were some beliefs that there was a mythic, majestic, marvelous prehistory in which the mother goddess reigned supreme on earth. And this book kind of perpetuates that idea, and it suggests that perhaps the coming of the God that is depicted in the Hebrew Bible was an attack on the mother god. And so I have to say, as a rabbi, I have to say that scholarship has been put aside. Some of that scholarship is somewhat anti-Semitic, suggesting that not only did the Jews kill Jesus, as some people suggest, but we also killed the gods. No, it didn't happen. In 1992, a fabulous scholar named Tikva Frymerkensky produced this book called In the Wake of the Goddesses, Women, Culture, and the Biblical Transformation of Pagan Myth. And she was a scholar of the ancient Assyrian and Babylonian languages, and also a feminist, also Jewish, perished too young from cancer. She was a scholar at the University of Chicago. And this magnificent, it's a small book, it's a marvelous book. So any of you who are interested in this whole discussion of gods and goddesses in antiquity, read this book, because she describes very simply that the pantheon of gods and goddesses that was somewhat balanced in very, very early antiquity, long before the Hebrews even came on the scene, there had been an ascendancy of masculine god forms, and the feminine gods had disappeared from dialogue and from public use as much. So it's a great book, and she's clearly pointing us in the right direction, and she has the credentials to do it because she can read the literature in the original ancient text. And then I'm going to show you one more book, in 2000, and she does it in a very, T. Professor Kensky does it in a very warm and supportive way. She's not attacking the previous feminists. It's a corrective. She's pointing it out nicely. Then in 2000, a scholar named Cynthia Eller comes along with a very powerful book called The Myth of Matriarchal Prehistory, Why an Invented Past Won't Give Women a Future. And she slams into the beloved to some people beliefs that in antiquity there was goddess worship in many parts of the world and that the goddess predominated. And she, obviously as the title described, she calls that a myth of matriarchal prehistory. And she argues very effectively why going back to that, why trying to make that myth into reality will not necessarily move us forward. So these are all three books that I recommend you look at in sequence. I was moved by the line in Daisy's presentation with wonderful pictures and words of prayer. I was moved when she said, somebody said in it, the text said, "Yesterday's gone and tomorrow isn't here yet." Yesterday's gone, tomorrow isn't here yet. So if we can just let go of yesterday and not already be projecting ourselves into tomorrow, we can really assess our current situation. Where are we? What's the ground we're standing on? The ground I'm standing on here in Carlotta. I'm sitting in my chair at my desk in my house where I've lived out here for 40 years. And the former home of the Nangatal people, about which not very much is known. So we want to know what ground is under our feet right now. What are our current circumstances? We want to think of all those mothers fleeing Ukraine, of all those mothers who are being bereaved of their children, those young soldiers in both the Ukraine army and the Russian army. My heart aches for those Russian mothers as much as it does for the Ukrainian mothers. And we're standing on some blood-soaked ground. So we want to move our spirituality forward. We want to move and see what we can do to move this gender disparity in our God language, to move that right along. So the feminine aspect, a feminine face of God, sometimes a feminine counterpart to a masculine God, emerges in many different religious traditions. In the Jewish tradition, we have a term Shekhinah, which is from the word that means to dwell, l'shechem, to dwell. And there's a wonderful story that in the early 70s, some feminists were gathered in Israel, and they wanted to write a new version of the Passover Haggadah, which is the telling of the story of the mythic Exodus from Egypt. And they were getting stuck on God language. And I think they were gathered in Tel Aviv, and one of them, they said, what are we going to say for God language? They said, let's call Jerusalem. They always have the good ideas there. And they called and they said, what do you call you know who? And the Jerusalemite feminist scholars said, we call her Shekhinah, she who dwells within. So we have this lovely feminist appropriation of a term that goes back to the Hebrew Bible, in which it does not mean a feminine presence. It's just a feminine noun. Remember I said that Hebrew is a gendered language? It's a feminine noun that usually refers to the divine power. The divine power, the immanence of the divine, as opposed to the transcendence. And then the mystics, the Kabbalists, bring this forward as a very, with the feminine, some of the feminine attributes that go along with the gendered language. But she is a passive, receptive, stereotypically female presence. Got your note, Shoshana. Thank you. I'm right there. So the feminists refigure her and say, let her be an empowered woman. So that's what I have to say to you, my dears. As we move forward, we need to reclaim God language. We need to reshape it for our own times and let gender flow into some modern, contemporary, appropriate for us ideas of what the divine might be. And I'll share a song with you before we go. I have just enough time. Just as we hear a lot of traditional music about our Father who art in heaven, that was said in the public schools when I was young, you know. It's nice to have some God language that invokes the divine as a mother, understanding that not everybody gets along perfectly with their mother, not everyone gets along so well with their fathers. So you may want to go to an archetypal way of thinking as you hear this song, and please feel free to join me and sing along, and let this be a prayer for all those mothers in Ukraine and Russia. Mother of time, Mother divine, oh, Mother of mine, Mother of time, Mother divine, oh, Mother of mine, Mother of all, you hear my call. You pick me up every time I fall. You take my hand so I can understand the way to walk into your promised land. Mother of time, Mother divine, oh, Mother of mine, Mother of time, Mother divine, oh, Mother of mine. You give us rest, and we are blessed, like babies snuggled on a mama's chest. You guide and keep us in our sleep, and send us visions from the dreamy deep. Mother of time, Mother sublime, whoa, Mother of mine, Mother of time, Mother divine, whoa, Mother of mine. I see your face in every place. You sparkle with the stars way out in space, and you hide so deep inside my secret soul and my spirit guide. Mother of time, Mother divine, oh, Mother of mine, Mother of time, Mother divine, oh, Mother of mine, Mother of time, Mother divine, oh, Mother of mine, Mother of time, Mother divine, oh, Mother of mine. Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, Shoshana. Thank you, Linda. It's been a pleasure to be involved.
Yeah.
We were worried about being too hot. It's like, whoa, it's cold.
Yeah.
Well, of course, it wasn't too cold when I was up there singing.
Right, right. I have a
Leslie.
How fun was that?
How fun,
Girl, that
how
was
fun was
awesome.
that?
Oh my God, Leslie, thank you so
Okay,
much for making me do this.
Remember how last year we're like, we gotta keep doing it, and we didn't? Well,
I
we're
know.
gonna keep it up.
All right, we're gonna keep it up. We're gonna keep it up, and we're gonna start doing some. We'll start doing a bunch of other songs that.
Yeah.
Look at this gorgeous quilt.
I know.
Fabulous.
Fabulous. And look, it's like sparkly thread.
I know.
The thread is sparkly. Yes, and the material is sparkly. Wow.
Water is draining out of the flowers.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Aw. Thank you so much, Tim. Wow. Wow. Yep.
Tim, you are a gem. Thank you so much for doing this.
I hope she doesn't think I got the crap.
And listen, Russ told me not to tell you, so I'm gonna tell you anyway.